California's Gold is produced in association with KCET Los Angeles and is seen statewide on California Public Television. This series is endorsed by the California Teachers Association, the California School Boards Association, and the California Library Association.
Well, hello everybody, I'm Huell Hauser, and here we are on this beautiful morning in one of the most beautiful places anywhere in California. We're at Leo Carrillo State Park, which is right on the coast in the northern part of Malibu, north of Los Angeles. And this beach is famous, this park is famous for its beautiful beach and its beautiful stretch of ocean. Look at that, it doesn't get any prettier than that. But we are not here to spend the day on the beach or in the water. We're here because of a fish story, a big fish story, a big fish story that ends up being very much a part of California's gold. Okay, our adventure begins. We promised you a big fish story, and I promise you will not be disappointed. Here's the big fish himself right here. Bill, introduce yourself to everybody.
Hey, Huell, my name's Bill Ernst. I live in Malibu, and I've been spearing fish here at Leo Carrillo since the 60s.
Okay, spearing fish, and here's the spear gun right here, which is a whole nother way. It's a whole kind of a group of you who specialize in spear fishing rather than fishing with a rod and a reel.
Right, Huell, and this is all free diving, where we hold our breath, dive down, and spear the fish. So we're on equal grounds with the fish. It's very sporting.
You're down there with the fish.
With the fish, holding our breath.
All right, so you like to come out here. Boy, it's a beautiful morning out here. This is a beautiful place. How do you get along with the surfers?
Oh, real good. I go out in a kayak, and I go down a little bit outside of the surfers where there's not much surf, so I can get out real easy.
All right, so you go out in your kayak and you go down underwater with your spear gun, and let's kind of begin telling this story now. What happened on the day before the story we're going to finally hear about?
Well, the day before, I heard that white sea bass were in the area, and so I went out to my favorite hole, which I've gotten white sea bass, like I say, for the past 40 years.
You like to look for white sea bass.
White sea bass is the most primo fish any fisherman or diver could get in California.
Yeah. So you heard there was white sea bass out here. They were running out here.
They were running, and so I went to my favorite hole, and it took me about a half hour, but I ended up spearing a 68-pounder.
Whoa!
68 was my personal best. It was my club record. I was the happiest guy in the world to get that 68-pounder.
So you got a 68-pound white sea bass with your spear gun here.
That's correct.
Okay, now most people would be satisfied with a 68-pound white sea bass. But you came back for more the very next day, and what happened?
Well, yeah, I came back for more because I don't go out to spear records. I get fish to eat. I've got fish for my parents their whole life, and so I went out just trying to get another fish, and I didn't really care about records. I thought that I couldn't beat a 68-pounder.
The very next day you went out?
Very next day I paddled and I didn't want to mess around, so I went to paddled it about 50 feet from where I speared that exact same 68-pounder. I only made 2 dives. I dove one dive about in the middle of the kelp, and then my second dive was toward the edge of the kelp, exactly where I got the fish.
And what did you see down there? Well, how hard is it to see a big fish underwater amongst all the kelp?
Well, it depends on the visibility that day, but that day the visibility was about 20 feet. So 20 feet's fairly normal and reasonable to spear these fish.
And what did you see? Something that looked like Moby Dick off in the background? What did you see?
Well, on that second dive, I started kicking toward the outside of the kelp where I knew the fish would be, and I saw 2 huge fish, the biggest white sea bass I've ever seen in my life.
2 of them?
They were 2 of them. The one in front was humongous, but I couldn't get close to him because as soon as they sense you, they're the real wary fish. They could sense your movement in the water. I couldn't get the furthest one away, so I put my sights on the one in the back, which was a little bit smaller. And I end up making a pretty good shot on him.
You speared him?
Speared him, yeah, right through about the center of the body up toward the head. And so immediately he took off swimming straight down. I was in about 60 feet of water, but I was only about 15 feet down where I shot him. So he took off going for the bottom.
Took you down with him?
Well, I have a line attached to the back of my gun, and so I let him take the gun and the line and holding on to the end of the line. And luckily I made such a good shot that he only ran out about 30 feet, and then he stopped, and then I was on the surface by then because I was holding my breath while he was going out, and I just pulled him right up.
And all this happened basically right out?
Exactly right out there. That's my hot spot.
All right, now we've led up to the payoff, and that's what we're getting ready to see right now. And here it is. Get ready, because I guarantee you people at home have never, well, nobody's ever seen a fish this big.
Never. The previous world record was 80 pounds, and this was 93.4.
93.4 pound white sea bass that you caught right here. You speared it
exactly right here. It just blew the old record out of the water.
And what did you think when you saw what you had done and started pulling it out of the water?
Well, initially it was further away than I thought, and so when I shot it I thought maybe 60, 70 pounder, and then after I pulled it off the bottom, as I was pulling it toward me, it kept getting bigger and bigger and bigger, and I couldn't believe it. It barely fit in my board, and so the same board that a 68 pounder fit in real easily, and this one just
you
barely
could hardly
fit.
Get this out of the water on the shore and up to your car, right?
It was real difficult. It took me about 4 or 5 drags to drag it up to the car.
Oh my!
And then I couldn't lift it in my car. I had to wait for a surfer to come by to help me in the car.
It was so heavy.
Yeah, it was so big.
And why is this fish this big? I mean, this is the biggest in the world.
Heaven only knows. Everybody has said they've seen 90 and 100 pounders, but no one's ever gotten them. Back in the 60s, when it was the heyday for white sea bass, no one even got 80 pounders. So who knows what led to it.
And what did you do with the fish? First off, we should let everybody know this is not
the real fish.
But this is an exact replica of the fish. This is a mold of your fish.
That's correct. I took it to Lyons Haver in San Diego, which is the premier fish mounting people, and they had never seen one this big, so they had to make a special mold, and
for this fish.
They casted the exact fish and printed it up.
And where do you have this thing? Do you have it up over your mantle at home?
Oh yeah. It's because, like I say, I never go after world records or anything like that, and to have a local Malibu boy spirit here in a spot that I've dove for 40 years is just wonderful.
Did you have your picture in the paper?
Oh,
you sent us, and I'm going to get out of the way because look, this is almost exactly the picture that you sent us, a full poster of you standing there with your fish, grinning from ear to ear.
I couldn't be happier.
This, for a fisherman, is about as good as it gets.
It is. This is the premier fish for California right here. And to get one that big is just out of the world.
So are you famous now? Are you in the record books? Have you had newspaper articles? We're here with our television cameras. I mean, this is a life-changing event.
Well, Huell, this is probably the most recognition I've ever gotten. Spearfishing is kind of a small sport, and it's kind of an in-house group. So it's nice to be recognized.
And how do you top this, or do you even try? There's
no, I can't even think about it.
It's all downhill from here.
Exactly.
Well, it's a beautiful, beautiful fish. White sea bass are good eating.
They're the best fish in California.
Yeah.
And some divers go their whole lives without ever getting one. They're so weary that any little noise, any bubble coming out of your wetsuit,
they spook real easy.
Real easy. So
well, this one was probably kind of complacent after all these years.
Being that big, yeah.
It had escaped being caught for so many years. How old do you think this fish is?
Well, these fish inside have ear bones, and these ear bones, they dissect them, and they're like rings of a tree. And this one, I took it to the Hubbs Institute down in San Diego.
That's a perfect segue, because we're going to go to it's called the what institute?
Hubbs
Institute.
Well, it's the Hubbs-Seaworld Institute.
Right.
It was a SeaWorld building, and they donated it to Hubbs Institute.
And you took a, what did you take out of here?
It's the ear bone.
You took the ear bone of the fish.
Here's the exact ear bone right here. This is the exact one of them. They're a pair. They're mirror images of each other, and this is off one of the sides. And you can see they're slightly rounded on the bottom.
And that's the real ear bone.
This is the real one, and they use these for balance.
That's what you sent down to Hubbs Institute, and they can age a fish. It's like rings on a tree.
That's what they had to cut it twice. They had to ruin it to do it. That's why I saved one.
Well, I'm going to give this back to you because this is a prize too.
Yeah, I make earrings and all sorts of jewelry out of them.
Well, you could make a lot out of this.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Well, this has been very exciting, but this is just the first part of our adventure because we're going to leave you and your fish here at Leo Carrillo Beach, and we're going to now travel to the Hubbs Institute because this story has now developed into a larger story about white sea bass in California and things being done to protect and preserve them for future generations to enjoy, just like you enjoyed the experience of catching this one.
Yeah, you'll be amazed at how thorough these guys are at Hubbs. They do such a great job of perpetuating the white sea bass
species. Well, we're ready to go. We're ready to be amazed, but I don't know what's going to top this. This is about as good as it gets. Let's just stand back and get a shot of you standing. He's right here on the beach where it all happened. The record holder with his record fish. How many pounds?
93.4.
93.4. Bill Ernst, his name is in the record books, with the largest white sea bass ever caught anywhere in the world. And a fine example, both of them are, of California's gold. Our adventure continues. We're heading south. Okay, our fish story continues. Our fish adventure, our white sea bass adventure continues. We have left Bill on the beach with the replica of his 90-plus pound white sea bass, and we have come down to Carlsbad, California, to the Hubbs-Seaworld Research Institute. And fellas, it's nice to see you all here. I'd never heard of the Hubbs-Seaworld Research Institute. We're going to find out more about what you do. I guess the first question is, how did you get involved in Bill's white sea bass story?
Well, we had heard that Bill had landed this world record fish. Of course, it was all in the news. It was all over the cover of magazines, etc. And so at that point, we had been doing a study at looking at the age of white sea bass. And so to age white sea bass, we use the ear stones, and you can cut the ear stones and count rings like you would on a tree. And we'll see.
Now wait a minute, when you say ear stones, what do you mean? It's a bone, isn't it? He
Yes.
showed us that he has one in his hand up there.
And so all fish have 3 pairs of those bones, and so he showed you one of the pair of bones. He actually, upon our request, I asked him if I get one of those bones from him, and explaining the importance and the scientific contribution that it could have, and he said, sure, I'll gladly send you one of the bones. And
so he cut out one of the ear bones.
Yes.
It's got a technical name.
It's called an otolith, or a sagittal otolith in particular, for this one.
He sent it to you?
Yes.
Okay, and what did you do with it? Is that what we're going to find out inside here?
Yes, well, we'll see exactly how we processed it. We embedded it in resin, we cut it in half, and we looked at it under a microscope, and we counted rings just like you would on a tree to age this fish.
So you wanted to see how old the fish was. And Mark, we're standing in front of this building. I assume we're going to get the tour, right?
Yeah, you sure will. We'll get a tour here. This is where we raise white sea bass for release back into the ocean to replenish wild populations.
And why white sea bass? Why is the Hubbs Research Institute interested in white sea bass? That's kind of a narrow area of interest, isn't it?
Well, it represents a starting point, and it's probably the most popular sport and commercial fish along the Southern California coastline. And the populations have been heavily depleted over the last 20 or 30 years, so it's a good species to work with.
So you're studying white sea bass, and what better white sea bass to study than the world record holder, right?
That's correct. That's
correct.
correct.
Let's go inside and see what's going on. I bet you got a lot of white sea bass in here, right, fellas?
Absolutely, yeah.
Okay, we're inside this looks like a laboratory of sorts.
Yes, it is. And this is where we do the work, or did the work, on Bill's otolith.
A fish laboratory.
Fish laboratory, yes.
All right, now I don't know much about labs, but I know this is a fish head.
Yes, it was. It was a fish head. It still is a fish head, but what this represents, actually, this is the head of a white sea bass, and inside here, this is kind of show you where the ear bones or the otoliths sit. They sit inside this cavity here.
Look at this.
And so this is where Bill took his otoliths out of.
Right from in
Yes,
here.
yes. And so they have two pairs, and so basically this one you can remove. And
Okay.
basically I got one of these in the mail from Bill, and so now how do we age the white sea bass? Well, this is how we do this. We basically put the otolith in the tray, and we embed it in like ice cube tray here. We embed the otolith in resin. So now you can see
So you just poured resin
pour resin
in.
there. It hardens, and you've got now this ice cube of resin with a otolith inside.
This is the ear bone
That's the ear
inside
bone, yes.
here. And then, look at this. I have an idea. I know what you did.
Yes.
You
And so-
slice it right here.
Exactly. So this here, it's secured in here. This is a diamond blade. It basically spins around, and you just put the ear bone on there and the resin, and it just cuts right through. It makes a nice little sliver of the otolith.
So this is getting the cross section just like you would get a cross section of a tree.
Correct.
To see all the rings.
Yes.
And look over here. I don't want to get this mixed up with these. You all,
But we've been
you
doing
do a
quite
lot of
bit.
this, don't you?
Yes, we've been doing quite a bit. So you can see we've done literally thousands of these. Both
These are all white sea
these
bass.
are all white sea bass. Some of them are from our hatchery or known aged fish, and some are from the wild, all kind of mixed in here and left over from the study that we've been doing for the past year.
Okay, so you got it sliced,
Yes.
and then we go over here, right?
Yeah, so then we put it under the microscope so we can then take a look at it closer. And this is, in fact, is a slice of Bill's otolith right here.
This
sitting
is
on
it right
This is it right
here.
here. Yes. And then looking at it through the camera on the microscope, we then can count rings. These
Oh,
bands.
this is it.
This is it right here.
This is
Yes.
the cross section right here.
Yes. As you'd see it,
And
yes.
each one of these little yellow lines represents what?
Represents 1 year of growth. And it's kind of amazing when you cut it, these little yellow lines just show up. Well, actually, we just put those lines on there to make it easier for you to see.
But if you
the
know what
rings.
you're looking for, you know
Yes.
where those lines are.
Yes.
So you figured out from this cross section that Bill's fish was how old?
This fish was 24 years old.
Is that old for a white sea bass?
Well, no one's really conducted a study to this level looking at the bones of the fish, and so yes, it is probably for a 94-pound fish that Bill caught at 25 years old. These fish probably don't live much beyond 30 years in age.
Wait a minute, what do you mean you haven't done research? You got a whole box of them right here.
Yes, we have, but no one's done it up until this point, and so it looks like that 24-year-old, that's the oldest fish that we've seen in our studies.
Really?
That's right. So Bill's fish, you look in this box where there's literally thousands of otoliths, and Bill's would be the biggest among these. So that's what makes it so significant.
So his was the biggest white sea bass caught and the oldest white sea bass caught.
That's correct.
Anywhere in California or anywhere in the world?
Well, anywhere that we've gotten otoliths from, certainly anything in modern time. I mean, we haven't seen otoliths from people who've collected fish, say back in the late 1800s. I mean, we've certainly know people have caught white sea bass back at that
Well,
time.
I tell you, because I know Bill's watching, I don't want to even raise the possibility that at some point his record might be eclipsed.
Yes, so who knows?
It still holds the
right now.
record.
Yes, it is.
According to the people here at the Hubbs Institute,
That's
the
correct.
fish is still the oldest and the biggest.
Yes.
Okay, now we're getting into the main part of the Research Institute here. Lots of big tanks full of, look at this, big white sea bass. What is the deal here?
Well, these are our breeding stock, so we call them our brood stock. These are adult white sea bass that were collected from the wild. We have an equal mix of males and females in here. The biggest ones probably approaching maybe 70 pounds in size.
Boy, they are big fish.
They sure are. We have 4 breeding tanks with about 50 adult fish in each tank. And each tank is set on its own seasonal cycle of water temperature and day length. And so through that process, we can get one batch of fish or another to be spawning year round.
So they are happy white sea bass.
Very happy white sea bass.
You know that for sure.
Well, we're getting eggs from them, so they got to be very happy.
We're getting the fish tour. This is a huge facility. We've seen the big fish, the breeding fish. Now where have you brought us, Mark?
Well, this is where the eggs get stocked. And so at this particular time, we have in this tank here white sea bass larvae that are a week old.
So wait a minute, these are, each one of those little specks is potentially a white sea bass.
It is a small white sea bass. It's a larval stage of a white sea bass.
How old are these?
1 week old.
Wow.
So it's amazing to think that even Bill's fish started off that small.
So how many of these, how many millions of them do you have here in a year's period of time?
We have literally millions, starting off at this size, millions of eggs. And of course, in the wild and in the hatchery, mortality is pretty high in the early stages. But our goal is to produce hundreds of thousands of juvenile fish for release.
It just keeps getting better from the larvae, those teeny little larvae. Look at this. What are we looking at now? Obviously, they've gotten older.
That's right. These are 3 months old, so juvenile, what we call juvenile white sea bass by this stage. And they're looking like miniature versions of the adults that you saw earlier.
And you've got thousands of them in this one tank here.
That's right. So it's part of our goal of getting, as I mentioned earlier, hundreds of thousands of fish out into the water.
Next step. Now, these two white sea bass are not dead. They are
Anesthetized.
Yeah, because what are we going to do next?
Because next we're going to tag them. Every single fish that we release, we place a tag in their cheek muscle.
Can I pick one up?
Sure.
Boy, he's out. And how do you do that?
And so how we do that is with this machine here, and basically this is the jaw muscle. We'll actually put the tag right into here, tag them.
So the tag goes right inside.
Yes. So I don't want to put this tag in there,
yeah,
but yes.
I got the idea there. There you go.
The tag goes right inside. We then take this wand and we can pass it over the cheek and tell, yeah, it looks like it's been tagged, and then let them go.
All right, now look at this. Did you donate your white sea bass head today? I did. Now, what is this all about?
So that's about asking fishermen to remember to save their heads of the legal-sized white sea bass they catch. Yes, so we can then go back, look for that little tag that we just placed in the cheek, and that information, the number that's etched on that tag, will tell us where we released that fish. So, for example, a fisherman says, hey, I caught this fish at Catalina Island this year. I can go back and look at the database and say, hey, this after pulling that tag out, this fish was released in San Diego 13 years ago.
Ah, so you know how long the fish lives, where the fish traveled. It kind of gives you information about the migration of the fish.
And about the success of our program.
And you have to tag how many individual fish every year?
Well, you know, up to at least 350,000 fish.
Who gets that job? Is that try to hold back your enthusiasm and your excitement, because, and you anesthetize these little fish for what, a few minutes, and then they pop back up, ready to go.
And they're ready to go.
See, he won't remember a thing in the morning, but he's going to be tagged and released, and the release is the last part of our fish story, and that's coming up next. It just keeps getting better. We've now come to Huntington Beach. We're at the Huntington Beach Harbor, and what are we looking at now, Mike?
Well, Huell, we're looking at one of 13 grow-out facilities that we have here in Southern California. We bring the fish again from the hatchery at that 3-inch size, deliver them to these grow-out pens that are run by these volunteers like Bob here. And
grow-out?
Yes, grow-out. So they actually spend months here, not just weeks, but months, where they'll get to about 10 inches in size. That's the size roughly that we're releasing them at. So
and then you're going to release them.
Yes.
Bob, what's going on? What's your name, sir?
Bob Hetzler.
Okay, tell us what's going on here. This looks very exciting. You're fishing out a lot of white sea bass.
That's right. We're ready to release them, but when we release them, we have to count how many we're going to release.
So you got to count every fish that's in there. How many you got in there at last count?
About 2,500.
Oh, you have to count each one of them individually.
Individually, one by one.
Now,
So
how long have they been in there?
They've been in here 168 days.
Okay, so you are their guardian.
We're their mama
for
for
168 days. And the name of this organization is Hope Harbor Ocean Preservation Enhancement.
Yeah, it all comes down to hope. Harbor Ocean Preservation Enhancement. The short of that is HOPE.
Okay, and all these fellows here are just doing volunteer work.
These are our volunteers. We have volunteers that work 3 or 4 days a week, cleaning the pen, checking the fish, feeding the fish, and doing it. And that goes on every week for the whole time they're here. The whole time they're here.
Somebody's counting them right now. Every fish is getting counted.
That's right. That's right.
All right, now what's going on down here? Look, we got another thing going on down here. What's happening down here, fellas?
Hey, we're measuring and weighing the fish and checking for tag retention.
Fish
and also
from
taking
in here?
Right.
Not all 2,600 of them?
No, just a subsample of them.
Uh-huh.
And what we'll do is we'll take 2 lengths and a weight.
This is fascinating.
It's 202.
So you're measuring the length of the fish.
232.
He's writing it down.
And then they
then
get a
what
weight.
Are you doing?
We weigh them up here.
Now, has this fish been kind of deadened a little bit, anesthetized?
Oh yeah, these fish are
okay, what
under
was
anesthesia.
That you just did?
Well, this is checking for the coated wire tag. It's just a fancy metal detector.
Okay, so the tag's in there.
Tag's in there.
And then what are you going to do?
I'm going to hold it tight, and
look at this.
Danny's going to take a fin clip.
A fin? Why are you doing that?
This is for genetic purposes.
So you're clipping, you're getting a little bit of DNA there.
That's right, that's right. So we'll know.
Then you put it in there, and as soon as it kind of gets back to life, what are you going to do? Release it?
Then they get released.
Wow, this whole thing is fascinating.
It's very intricate, a lot of steps along the way.
Wow, who would have thought that you go to all that trouble for each individual fish that's released out there?
We're just trying to be responsible in our approach to helping replenish and bring back white sea bass fishery to what it was back, in the 50s and earlier.
Because it's gone down. They've gone down in numbers,
correct.
Right?
The number of fish that have been caught by the fishermen just aren't what they were, back in the 50s when they landed 50, 60,000 fish a year. Now it's just a fraction of that at a few thousand fish a year.
So there it is, our fish story. A fish story that started with Bill Ernst and his record-setting white sea bass. That story led us to the Hubbs Research Institute to see all the good work that you're doing. Then we've followed the fish all the way here to Hope in Huntington Beach and to see the good work your organization and all your volunteers are doing. This has been fascinating. All of it is about helping to preserve and protect and replenish the white sea bass here in California, right, Mike?
That's correct. Hopefully someday they will come back to what they were historically.
Well, you're certainly doing your part. Congratulations. Congratulations to all the volunteers. Don't lose count, whatever you do. This has been a great fish story. A fish story will Bill, his fish, the Hubbs Research Institute, your organization, and all the other organizations, all of them together. Fine examples of California's gold. Now, this has been a fish story that you can believe. It's the real thing, isn't it?
That's right, Huell.
Well, congratulations to our friend Bill Ernst and his record-holding white sea bass. And if you'd like to go on this fishing adventure again, share it with family or friends, or perhaps donate a copy to your local school or library. It's available on video cassette and on DVD. All you have to do is call 1-800-266-5727, and we'll be glad to send it to you right away.